IXL Section BB 10, solve a quadratic equation by completing the square. For this IXL, I'm only asking you to get up to 90 points because this IXL, you're going to have to work out every problem, so you only got to get to 90 points. Now, before doing IXL Section BB 10, I highly recommend that you watch the video I made for BB 9 and that you also complete IXL Section BB 9, which is called Complete the Square. That's really going to help you to understand what we're doing in this lesson. And it's a lot easier than this lesson. So definitely do BB 9 before you do BB 10. Alright, so here's our first example from BB 10. Now, I'm telling you right now, pretty much every single problem, you're going to have to work it out. I have to work out every single problem, so you're going to have to work it out as well. Alright, so here's the quadratic equation that they give us. Okay, it's w squared minus 6w minus 35 equals 0. The first thing you should do at the beginning is always get the c term, or the constant, and move it to the right side of the equation. Okay? Remember that the quadratic expressions are written in this form. So the number that's by itself, which is c, the c term, move that to the right side of the equation. Always do that, okay? You always have to do that. So it's going to become w squared minus 6w equals 35. Okay, now I'm going to complete the square. And to complete the square, you have to take the b term, take this number right here, divide it by 2, and square it. So if I take negative 6, divide it by 2, and square it, I'm going to get positive 9. And whatever you add to one side of the equation, you have to add to the other side of the equation. Okay, by doing that, that's going to allow me to create a quadratic expression here that I could factor out into a perfect square. Right? If I factor this, it's going to be w minus 3 to the second power, because w minus 3 times w minus 3 will give me this expression that I had originally. And on the right hand side, 35 plus 9 is going to give me 44. Okay, now I'm trying to solve for w. So I want to get rid of that exponent. The way I'm going to get rid of that exponent is by getting the square root of both sides of the equation. Okay, when I get the square root of both sides of the equation, on the left hand side, I'm going to get w minus 3 equals. On the right hand side, the square root of 44 is going to be positive and negative 6.63 if I round it to the nearest hundredth. Right, so this is approximately, the square root is positive and negative 6.63. We got to round it to the nearest hundredth. Alright? Okay, so that means when I move the 3 to the right side of the equation, w is approximately 3 plus 6.63, or w is approximately 3 minus 6.63. All I'm doing is when I move the 3 to the right, the 3 becomes positive, and I gotta check. I gotta do both. I gotta add it with 6.63, and I also gotta check what it would be if I subtract 6.63. That's gonna give me my two answers. My first answer is w is approximately 9.63, because when you add 3 plus 6.63, you get 9.63. And my second answer is if I do 3 minus 6.63, then w will be approximately negative 3.63. Alright, so those are my two answers. W equals, it should be approximately, but 9.63 or negative 3.63. Alright, let me do another example here. Alright, here's the next example. Okay, so they give us t squared plus 20t minus 1 equals 0. So again, the first step that you should do is move the c term, which is negative 1, move it to the right side of the equation. So I'll have positive 1 over here. Now I'm going to do completing the square. So I'm going to take the 20, divide it by 2, and square it. 20 divided by 2 is 10, and 10 to the second power is 100. And whatever you add to one side of the equation, you got to add to the other side of the equation. This is going to allow me to factor this out here and get a perfect square, which is going to be t plus 10 to the second power equals 101. Alright, now the next step is I want to solve for t, so let's get rid of this exponent by getting the square root of both sides of the equation. The square root of t plus 10 to the second power is t plus 10. And the square root of 101 is going to be positive and negative, approximately positive and negative 10.05. So that means t is approximately, when I move the 10 to the right side of the equation, it becomes negative. So t is approximately negative 10 plus 10.05, or t is approximately negative 10 minus 10.05. Okay, so for my first answer, t is going to be approximately, sorry. Alright, for my first answer, t is going to be approximately 0.05. And for my second answer, t is going to be approximately negative 20.05. Once you get the hang of it, it's not as difficult, although you do have to work it out. Don't be discouraged if at the beginning you get them wrong a couple times, right? It takes a couple, you got to practice it a few times before you get the hang of it. So don't be discouraged if you get a couple wrong at the beginning. Alright, here's our next example. In this example, the c term is already by itself, so we don't have to move it. It's already on the right side of the equation. So we have m squared minus 10m, I'm going to leave a space there for when I complete the square, equals negative 19. Alright, so let's complete the square. I'm going to take the b term divided by 2 and square it. And negative 10 divided by 2 is negative 5. And negative 5 to the second power is positive 25. And whatever you add to one side of the equation, you have to add to the other side of the equation. So on the left-hand side, when I factor that, I'm going to get m minus 5 to the second power. Alright, because negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25, and negative 5 plus negative 5 is negative 10. On the right-hand side, when I simplify that, I'm going to get positive 6. Now I'm going to get the square root of both sides. So the square root of m minus 5 to the second power is m minus 5. And on the right-hand side, the square root of 6 is going to be approximately, let me see, approximately 2.45. Positive and negative 2.45. Alright, so that means that when I move the 5 to the right, it'll become positive. So m is approximately 5 plus 2.45, or m is approximately 5 minus 2.45. So for my first answer, right, m is going to be approximately 7.45, and for my second answer, m is going to be approximately 2.55. Alright, next example. In a second, they're going to get just a tad a little bit more complicated, all right? So in this example, once again, the c term is already by itself, so I don't have to move it. So I have d squared plus 30d, let me leave a space there, equals 11. So now I'm going to do completing the square. So to complete the square, we got to get 30 divided by 2 and square it. 30 divided by 2 is 15. 15 to the second power is 225. And whatever you add to one side, you got to add to the other side of the equation. Okay, so now on the left side, when I factor that quadratic expression, I'm going to get d plus 15 to the second power equals, when I add these two, I'm going to get 236. Now let's get the square root of both sides so that we can solve for d. On the left hand side, the square root is going to be d plus 15. And that's going to equal approximately positive and negative 15.36. Alright, so now when I move the 15 to the right, it's going to become negative. So our two answers are going to be that d is approximately negative 15 plus 15.36, or d is approximately negative 15 minus 15.36. Okay, so the first answer is going to be d is approximately 0.36 when you simplify that. Or second answer is d is approximately negative 30.36. Hopefully by now you're starting to get the hang of it. Okay, next example. Again, on this one, the c term is already by itself, so I don't have to move it. So I have s squared minus 22s equals negative 35. So now I'm going to complete the square. Take negative 22 and divide it by 2 and then square it. So negative 22 divided by 2 is negative 11. And negative 11 to the second power is 121. And whatever I add to one side of the equation, I also have to add to the other side of the equation. Now this expression, I'm going to factor it, and I'm going to get s minus 11 to the second power. And on the right hand side, when I combine those two, it's basically 121 minus 35, and that's going to give me 86. Okay, now let's get the square root of both sides of the equation. Alright, so the square root of the left hand side is s minus 11, and that's going to equal approximately positive and negative the square root of 86, which is 9.27. Alright, so I'm going to move the 11 to the right, which makes it positive. That means that s is going to be approximately 11 plus 9.27, or s is approximately 11 minus 9.27. Alright, so for the first one, when I simplify that, it's going to be s is approximately 20.27, or s is approximately 1.73. So those are my two answers. Okay, 20.27, or s is approximately 1.73. Okay, now for the last few examples that I'm going to do, they all look like this, okay? So you should pay attention to these examples, even if you were understanding the previous ones, all right? On these examples, the first thing I want you to notice is look at A, All right, remember the a term is the leading coefficient. Okay, in order to do completing the square, a has to be positive 1. I'll say it again, in order to do completing the square, a has to be positive 1, like it was in all my previous examples. If a is not positive 1, you got to make it positive 1. Okay, so in this example, they're giving us negative 2t squared minus 16t minus 22 equals 0. What I'm going to do to make a positive 1 is I'm going to divide every single term by negative 2. If I divide everything by negative 2, it'll change a to positive 1 and allow me to complete the square. So this is what I'm doing. I'm dividing every single number by negative 2. Okay, when I do that, it's going to give me this new quadratic expression, which is t squared plus 8t plus 11 equals 0. So that's my new problem, basically. All right, what I did is I simplified this expression. Now it looks like this. All right, that's how you do it. When a is not 1, you got to make it 1 by dividing every term by whatever a is, which in this case is negative 2. Okay, now from here on out, I just do the same thing I was doing before. First thing I'm going to do is move 11 to the right. So t squared plus 8t equals negative 11. Now let's complete the square. I'm going to take positive 8 divided by 2 and square it. Positive 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 to the second power is 16. So I have to add 16 to both sides of the equation. Okay, so on the left-hand side, when I factor this expression, I'm going to get t plus 4 to the second power. Because 4 times 4 is 16, and 4 plus 4 is 8. On the right-hand side, I'm going to get positive 5. Now, let's get the square root of both sides. Alright, so that's going to give me t plus 4 is approximately positive and negative 2.24. Alright, so that means that I'm going to move the 4 to the right, making it negative. So t is approximately negative 4 plus 2.24, or t is approximately negative 4 minus 2.24. So for my first answer, t is going to be approximately negative 1.76, or for my second answer, t is going to be approximately negative 6.24. Okay, a couple more like these and we'll be done. Alright, so here's my next example. Again, in this example, a is not positive 1, so I got to make it positive 1. And I'm going to do that by dividing everything by whatever a is. So I'm going to divide everything by negative 3. Alright, so that's going to change the first term into positive r squared. This will be negative 26r equals positive 47. Now let's complete the square. I'm going to take the b term, which is negative 26. I'm going to divide it by 2 and square it. Negative 26 divided by 2 is negative 13, and 13 to the second power is 169. So I'm going to add 169 to both sides of the expression. Sorry, I didn't give myself much space there. 169. Okay, so now when I factor the left side, it's going to be r minus 13 to the second power, because negative 13 times negative 13 is positive 169, and negative 13 plus negative 13 is negative 26. On the right hand side, when I add 169 plus 47, I'm going to get 216. Now let's get the square root of both sides. The square root of the left side is r minus 13, and that's going to be approximately positive and negative 14.7. Okay, so I'm going to move the 13 to the right of the equation, making it positive. So r is approximately positive 13 plus 14.7, or r is approximately positive 13 minus 14.7. So for my first answer, r is approximately 27.7, or for my second answer, r is approximately negative 1.7. A few more. So here's my next example. So I got negative 2f to the second power minus 56f plus 26 equals 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is make a positive 1. And the way I'm going to do that is by dividing every term by negative 2, by whatever a is. Divide every term by whatever a is, and that'll change it to positive 1. Alright, so when I do that, my new quadratic expression is f squared plus 28f minus 13 equals 0. So now I factor the left side of the expression, and did I make a mistake here? Oh wait, I almost made a mistake. I forgot. I have to see. This is a perfect example of what happens when you forget to move the c term to the right, which is what just happened to me. I went to factor this and I realized, hey, what am I doing? All right, so you got to remember to move this term to the right. You could have done it at the beginning. In fact, I should have done it at the beginning and I forgot, but you could do it right here as well. So if I move it to the right, I'm going to have, let me write it up here so I can have more space. F squared plus 28f equals positive 13, all right? So there's a good chance that'll happen to some of you guys, all right? So watch out for that. I guess a good idea would have been to just move it at the beginning like I was doing earlier. Okay, so now let's do completing the square. So take the b term, divide it by 2, and square it. So 28 divided by 2 is 14, and 14 to the second power is 196. So add 196 to both sides of the expression, of the equation. All right, so on the left-hand side, when I factor that, I'm going to have f plus 14 to the second power. And on the right-hand side, 196 plus 13 is going to give me 209. Okay, now let's get the square root of both sides of the expression, of the equation, I mean. Alright, so the square root on the left is going to give me f plus 14, and that's going to be approximately positive and negative 14.46. So that means I'm going to move the 14 to the right, making it negative. So f is approximately negative 14 plus 14.46, or f is approximately negative 14 minus 14.46. So f is approximately, for the first one, it's going to be approximately 0.46, or f is approximately negative 28.46. All right, we have two more examples, okay? So in this example right here, we got 2z to the second power minus 36z equals negative 86. So the first thing I'm going to do is divide every term by positive 2 so that a will become positive 1. So if I divide everything by 2, my new expression is going to be z to the second power minus 18z equals negative 43. Alright, I forgot to leave space to complete the square. Okay, I'll fit it in there somehow. Alright, so I'm going to take the b term divided by 2 and square it. So negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9, and negative 9 to the second power is positive 81. And I got to add that to both sides. Okay, so now when I factor the left side of the equation, I'm going to get z minus 9 to the second power equals, and on the right hand side, when I do negative 43 plus 81, I'm going to get 38. Alright, so now get the square root of both sides. So z minus 9 is going to equal positive and negative, the square root of 38, which is 6.16. Oops. Alright, so that means I'm going to move the 9 to the right, making it positive. So z is approximately positive 9 plus 6.16, or z is approximately positive 9 minus 6.16. So z is approximately 15.16, or z is approximately 2.84. Okay, and then last example. This is our last example. All right, so that I don't make the same mistake that I did that one time, I'm going to begin by moving the negative 12 to the right, making it positive 12, so that I don't forget later on. Okay, now I want a to be positive 1, so I'm going to divide every single term by 4. All right, dividing every term by 4 will give me v to the second power. That's a v. Minus 26v equals 3. Okay, now let's do completing the square by taking the b term, dividing it by 2, and squaring it. So negative 26 divided by 2 is negative 13, and negative 13 to the second power is positive 169. So when I factor the left side of the equation, I'm going to get v minus 13 to the second power equals, on the right hand side, I'm going to get 172. Now get the square root of both sides of the equation. So v minus 13 is going to be approximately positive and negative 13.11. So v is approximately positive 13 plus 13.11, or v is approximately positive 13 minus 13.11. So for our first answer, v is going to be approximately 26.11, and for our second answer, v is going to be approximately negative 0.11. So there you have it, guys. That's it for this IXL BB10. Again, when you first start, you may make a couple mistakes. Don't let that discourage you. Okay, I promise you, after you do 2 or 3 of them correctly, you'll get the hang of it. However, you do have to work every single problem out. I had to work out every single problem. These you cannot do mental math. Okay, highly encourage you to do that. Do this IXL, because we're going to continue doing more stuff on quadratic equations during the next few classes. And the Algebra 1 EOC is right around the corner, and I promise you, you'll have questions about this on the Algebra 1 EOC. Alright, so it's for your own good. You only have to get to 90 points on this IXL. Okay? Alright guys, that's it for today. I'll see you guys next class. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day.